Hi there. Today I want to talk to you about Suite Analytics. Suite Analytics is NetSuite's total reporting tool. Let's start with an overview of what we mean with that. NetSuite Analytics consists of safe searches. I think most of you are familiar with those. Those are used for transactional info and often used as dashboard reminders and the big advantage of those is that you can set pretty great criterias and filters. Also, you're able to export saved searches to Excel, PDF, and email them based on a schedule. Second thing already in Suite Analytics is reports. So reports are commonly used in financial reporting because they have the as of date, which allows you to look at the past, say for example the balance sheet as per 31st of December. Reports have limited customization or formula functions. A simple x minus y is possible and also percentages, but the more SQL-like formulas we've seen in saved searches are not possible with reports. Well, great advantage of reports is that you can use web queries, which allows you to update your Excel with information from NetSuite without even logging in. Also, reports can be exported to Excel, PDF, and be emailed to you based on a schedule. Now, the last daughter of Suite Analytics in NetSuite is what they call analytics. Analytics is what I want to talk to you about today. Because it's fairly new, I've seen that not everyone is using that to its full capabilities. Analytics is comparable to saved searches. There's no as of date and there's a lot of transactional information. Also, there's a great tool that you can use to add formulas. However, you cannot just copy your formulas you have in your saved searches to analytics because the formulas in analytics are way more advanced and they're more like SQL. Advantage here is also that you get errors when your formula is not correct, which you don't get in saved searches. Also, you can define data sets and use them for multiple workbooks. I'll explain the structure a little bit later in the next slide. Also, per workbook, you can visualize your data. So you can create a graph, a pivot, or a table. And also, you can filter per visualization. Downside of analytics is that it has limited export functionality and there's no email or scheduling possibility. Let's look at the structure that I talked to you about with workbooks and datasets. So when you use analytics, start out with a dataset. The dataset is your set of criteria that you want to base your workbook on. Back to saved searches, those will be your criteria in the criteria tab. But the nice thing is you don't have to set the criteria over and over to reuse your data in different workbooks. Now from a workbook, you can then add your visualization options, for example, a graph, a pivot, or a table. You can also use only a graph or a graph and two pivots or just a table. It's up to you. And also, you can use two datasets in one workbook. So this gives you the possibility to create one view that you want for your data. Now, let's have a look in NetSuite how this actually works out. In NetSuite, you can find your analytics functions under the Analytics tab in your center. If you don't see this tab in your center, please ask your administrator for access. First thing we do is we start off with a data set. So under Analytics, you'll find workbooks and datasets. So let me just open up a dataset. So in this dataset, immediately you see that this dataset is used in one workbook. So making changes will affect these workbooks. For example, in this case, this is a workbook of open sales orders. So if I were to change, for example, the type to include return authorizations, my workbook would also be able to view return authorizations. So most of the time, if a dataset or a workbook is shared with you, you're not able to edit the dataset for this purpose because it might give you different results in your workbook than you expect it to. You can reuse a dataset to create a new one by just using the save as and give it a new name and then changing the criteria. In the dataset on the left, you will find the fields that you can use to add as criteria up top here or down below as results. The blue fields that you see here are the ones that you already added to your dataset. To add a new field, simply click on the transaction line, for example, or transaction to see the header fields, or transaction line to see the line fields. Open it and then down drill until you see something, a field that you want to use. Just be aware that all these subheadings lead to the final result being presented here. So now I'm under the entity customer channel and I can have these fields in my dataset. I can also search for the fields that I want to use. Say, for example, status. So if I want to include the status, I can simply drag it to my results and or drag it to my criteria tab. Immediately I get a pop-up. So say I just want the open sales orders. I would use sales order pending billing, for example, or multiple. You can just simply select it and say apply. Please be aware that it's now updating this data set. You can see that by this loading summary here. Until it has done that, your changes will not be represented in your workbook. So please wait with saving until it has finished updating its information. Also, with these fields, it's very handy that you can actually see more information. So if I click here, it tells me it's the field status and it's a text field. And it also gives me the field ID, which sometimes is very handy if you are in doubt what kind of status, in this case, it might be. Another interesting thing to do in a dataset is adding formulas. So go to formulas, and then you see I already have 4 formulas here. I can even edit them, delete them, or create a new one. If I go to new formula, I have to define the formula field name, for example, test. And here in this, I can create SQL-like queries, for example, case when, etc. I also have to choose my output type. And you can click on the functions. So say I want the toDate function. I click on it and I'll get a quick description of what this function actually does, and I can add the example formula to my field here. Before I save it, it's nice to validate your formula, and then it will tell you whether it's correct or not. In this case, it will say the output type of the formula is set to integer, being incorrect because it's a date function. If I set it to date, validate, you'll see I get the green checkbox, and now I can save the formula. After you've defined the formula, you still need to add it to your dataset, either in your result or in your criteria, simply by dragging it to the section there. And you see it will turn blue. So that is basically what a dataset is about. Now, it's good to know that in your dataset you define fields. All fields that you have in your dataset, in the results here, are also the fields that you can use in your workbook to visualize your data and also to add filters, etc. So maybe sometimes it's better to have a bigger data set and then down drill it in the workbook. Let's take a look at the workbooks. I'm not going to save this one. I'll go back to Analytics, go to my tab Workbooks, and let me just open up a workbook. You see already that in your workbook you have different visualizations. So here this is a chart and it's now loading the pivot. I can also add a new one, and there you see your 3 visualization options. Also here you can connect a data set different than the data set you already have in this one to create more visualizations. So say I want the table that's most like a safe search. You can simply drag your fields in here to have them represented. Also, from this bar on the left, you can immediately go to your data set. So say you're building your visualization and you realize you missed a field, simply open up your data set from here, add the field, save the workbook, and then you will have the button apply to workbook, and immediately you're able to use the new data, new criteria that you've added right here. If you make changes, sometimes you need to refresh. So make sure you use this button right here. The great thing about the workbooks is that you have advanced sorting and filtering options. So you can say ascending, descending, and also filter. So maybe in your data set you have the data for a year, but you just want to see the data for this month, or you can simply say month, make it better, say this month, select this month, apply, and then you'll see it will think again and update the tables. You can also rename the visualizations you have by simply double clicking on it and say this is my sold per customer, for example. And with the table you can export your data by clicking on this button. It will export the data file to a CSV file. On the other visualization options, the charts and a pivot, you cannot actually, well, you can export the data to a SVG file, which is basically an image, and also with the pivot you can export to SDF, which is not really helpful. So I'm hoping that NetSuite will improve this, because it would be great if you can just export your pivot to an Excel as well. So also with charts, there's multiple visualization options, and you can simply drag in the data that you want, refresh it, and it will show you what you want to see. Also with charts, you can click on the specific categories below, and it will update the visualization for you. Also here, you can say advanced filtering and sorting options. So I want to say it only for this year. I've set it to year, and I'll refresh it so that it shows me not per day, but per year. Probably it's just 1 year. Also, you can rename the fields. So now it says quantity sold, but you can also say quantity or whatever you like. Also, it's good to know that you can change the format, which is very handy. In this case, it's sold quantity, so it's an integer, which I like, but say I want decimals, I can simply change the fact that I want decimals here. I think that's about it. You can also share your workbooks. You can share them with roles or specific employees. Don't forget to save it or save as if you want to create a new workbook. let's go to the home screen to see what you can do with visualizations. You can also, like Save Searches, add the visualization or the workbook to your dashboard. Simply click on Analytics, say Setup, and then you'll see all the workbooks that you have and the specific tabs that you've created. So I could now add my chart, also choose how big I want it to show, and I can give it a custom name. And here you would have the updated data from your workbook. That was my brief overview of the analytics feature. Please check my website because I will keep you updated on the new feature that NetSuite releases for analytics. Because in 2021.1 release, there are new features in analytics which I will explain to you on my website as well. Have fun with visualizing your data, and please reach out to me if you have any questions